Don't quote me on any of this. This is me just thinking out loud. We rarely remember them as gay. Was he British? Did you kill him? Was it was it you? Uh we I again, this is like maybe cursory knowledge of volunteering. Um, their sexuality was just as important an influence on their lives as those whom we celebrate, and their stories have much to tell us about how sexual identities we understand today came to exist. Over the course of this book, we will profile these evil and complicated queers from our history. Among their ranks are emperors and criminals, fascist thugs and famous artists, austere Puritans and debauched bon viveurs. All of them have one thing in common. They engaged in same sex behavior that, in the context of today's society, we might understand as somehow gay. By examining the interplay of their lives and their sexualities, this book investigates the failure of homosexuality as an identity and a political project. It's anti identity politics historical examination, right? Failure seems like a harsh word, and this assessment, while our primary argument in this book is of course incomplete, there is indeed hope for queer forms, and our history contains many vital living histories of struggle, alliance, and solidarity. In the conclusion, we will think a bit about how these histories and the darker stories we've spent the book telling might exist in productive tension as we think about the future of gay lives in Europe and the United States. I love this. The failure, however, of mainstream, actually existing white male homosexuality to enact liberation and its embrace instead of full integration into the burning house of the couple form, the family unit, and what we might hopefully call late stage capitalism is real, and it is arranged on three primary axes. First, its separation from and fear of gender nonconformity. Second, its simultaneous appropriation of the bodies and sexualities of racialized people and denial of those people's full humanity, political participation, and equality. And third, its incessant focus on the bourgeois project of sexuality itself. This is such a good book. Bad Gays, good book. The first theme is explored in the scholarly work of people like Susan Stryker, who have pointed out that homosexuality's project of self justification has often depended on claiming normalcy, at the expense of a gender nonconforming other. The trans woman, the street queen, the person not respectable enough to pass. The second is examined by people like C. Riley Snorton. I have C. Riley Snorton's book. This is C. Riley Snorton's book. It is called. Oh. Yeah, hold on. This is C. Riley Snorton's book. It is called Black on Both Sides, A Racial History of Trans Identity. And what this does is it examines the author's experience as, I think, a trans man. I might be getting this wrong. But it's supposed to be about the author's experience as a black person before and after transitioning, and how they experience racism before and after transitioning in America. Really good find. The second is examined by people like C. Riley Snorton, Jules Gill Peterson, Ann Stoller, and Anne McClintock, who have described the ways that the bodies of racialized and colonized people and ideas about their social organization have served as the literal substance of white metropolitan homosexual and transgender subjectivities and identities. And the third has been discussed by a variety of queer Marxist scholars, From gay liberationists themselves to classic texts on the emergence of gay identity and its relationship to capitalism, to Christopher Chitty's recent intervention into the correspondence between crises of capitalism and the persecution of poor and working class sodomites. This book aims to explore these themes not through scholarly argument, but through storytelling, by retelling the stories of a set of queer lives that are individually fascinating and horrifying, and that collectively communicate a version, our version, of the story of the evolution and failure of white male homosexual identities. It can be very easy to assume that the way we think about identities has always been the same. Our race, gender, sexual orientation, and nationality can seem like such an important intrinsic part of ourselves that we assume they must have been important for people living in the past as well. But identities are, as Stryker has said, where the rubber of larger social and cultural systems hits the roads of lived experience. They are constantly changing and being changed by the shifting structural realities of life, by systems of production and exchange, by the ways that we relate to one another. Even the idea that people have a specific sexuality is remarkably recent, perhaps only 150 years old. Emerging out of the rapidly industrializing colonial metropolises of Europe, the rigid segmentation of time into separated zones of work and leisure, along with moral panics about backwards people, intended to justify colonial expansion and incursions into supposedly immoral private lives of the working classes, inculcated, I don't know that word. I'm going to type it in chat, just in case. Again, in all caps. Like a boomer. The idea that who you fucked made you who you were. Even after the invention of homosexuality and heterosexuality in the late 19th century, most people who felt same-sex love and desire did not want to convert their feelings into identities, to subscribe to being medicalized and set apart. It's the commodification of our identity, right? Inculcated is the past tense and past participle of the verb inculcate, meaning to teach, instill, or impress an idea, habit, or value upon someone through persistent, repeated instruction or reinforcement. Copy. Okay, so it's because it's essentially like the social propaganda that all of this stuff tells you that you are gay because of what you are doing, who you are having sex with. It says here who you are fucking, and because of the social repetition of this, the invention of homosexuality and heterosexuality arose. But people who were assigned that identity as gay, a lot of those people didn't actually want to take on that identity as gay because the identity came with being treated especially if you think intersectionally and you have these intersectional identities, say you were a black gay man, that you're experiencing racism and homophobia at the same time, a new form of racist homophobia. So these people were like, no, you can't call me gay. I just do what I want. Because being called gay would have been it's a label, it's an identity, and it's also a little bit too prescriptive for some people, probably, or a lot of them. These feelings were instead sources of shame, crimes for which they could be punished, and social taboos. As some people began to fight for the recognition and against medicalizing systems, movements began to emerge. The people who led these movements, at least the ones that have succeeded in winning state recognition, were often not working class people or people of color, but instead members of the emerging bourgeoisie who sought to assign positive values to their sexual acts within prevailing value systems of their time. The rich gays. The rich gays took control. And often, as we will see in this book, to bad ends. So all the rich gays are bad, is what it said. I agree with that. If you're gay and you're rich, you are bad. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. That was a lie. I shouldn't lie. I'm a good gay. At the same time, working class people, colonized people, and people of color have consistently lived, fought for, manifested, and expressed forms of social and sexual expression that have challenged both social prejudice towards sexual and gender minorities and the bourgeois politics of the gay elite. We're going to talk about Indigenous Two-Spirit identity when my friend Chelsea comes on. These challenges have often been bitterly resisted by that elite in their time, while still owning to their embrace of mass politics and disruptive organizing. Having far-reaching effects in our queer lives, often, after the fact, the queer elite will belatedly acknowledge these people, movements, moments, and struggles in an attempt to incorporate them into the dominant story of what it means to be gay or lesbian or trans, as though the working class gays and sex workers, drag queens, and trans women of color at the Stonewall Inn in New York City's West Village threw bricks at cops in order to win marriage equality for the gay and lesbian donor class. That was bars. Yeah. They act as if the like that's what I mean. The Stonewall riots was not looking for marriage recognition, right? Like the Stonewall riots was looking for the ability to gather legally in public without being harassed by the police. It was during a police raid. I would have to look into it. The Stonewall may have been like a mafia run in, but like the queer community and like the mafia have like close ties because the mafia would like host places for queer people to meet because queer people would spend money there. So the mafia was motivated by making more money, and they operated illegally anyway. So what was another illegal thing for them to do? But police were constantly looking for like gatherings of queer people, gatherings of gay people, and were acting against them because it was illegal to gather in groups of 2 or more in public. It was illegal to wear clothes that didn't like fit your gender assignment, and police were arresting people and doing worse things to them as a response to like catching them breaking this law. But yeah, the idea that like Stonewall riot was not for marriage equality. It was for our freedom to exist in public, our freedom to be together in public. All of these labels have been forced upon us at some point in time. Accepting them and self-identifying with them is a relatively recent development. Yeah, identity labels were invented by capitalism as a way to isolate us and keep us what's the word? It's keep us separated, isolation. There's another word I'm thinking of. It's similar to isolation, but it fractures the working class people. Atomized, no. Segregated, sort of. Segregated is sort of lung. We're fractured. Alienated. Alienation. That's what it is. Like we were talking about in Juche ideology earlier, we are a social people. Isolation and alienation is like our 2 important tools of capitalism to keep us from collectivizing and working together. So we're broken up into lots of different marginal identities, and those different marginal identities are pitted against each other for access to the resources to survive. So instead of collaborating, we're fighting each other. We're in constant competition with each other, and it makes it impossible for us to form a collective group of radical workers or radical people who want to change the system for the better. Where are we? Oh yeah, in this process of struggle and contestation that has created the very idea of what being gay or queer is, it has marked the production of queer cultures, the discussion of queer lives, and queer people's search for historical examples to justify their own acts and identities. Even the term gay has changed. 50 years ago, the term had a broader meaning that included queer and bisexual people, transgender people, transvestites, and more. Anyone who lived openly outside the heterosexual and cis-sexist norms of a more conservative society and suffered as a result. Today, it tends to refer to a more limited idea of same-gender